I remember the first time I reached that village, tucked deep between forested hills, where the fog clung low to ground like a restless spirit. The path was narrow, lined with gnarled trees whose branches swayed, though the air was still. Lanterns flickered in windows that seemed too dark for anyone to be inside. Every sound, my footsteps, a distant creak, the rustle of unseen leaves, was magnified, echoing through the empty streets. The air smelled faintly of smoke and damp earth, and I could feel eyes on me, though I saw no one. The village felt frozen, as if holding its breath, waiting. That's when I saw it. It was near dusk. The air hung low, heavy with the kind of chill that seeps beneath your skin before you even realize it. The path into the village was narrow, just wide enough for one person to walk at a time. The stones beneath my shoes were slick with dew, and the fog, it moved like something alive. It curled around the trees in pale ribbons, drifting across the lane in slow, deliberate folds. I could barely see more than a few feet ahead, just a faint glow of a lantern, swinging gently in the distance. Each step sounded wrong, too soft, too muffled, like the fog was swallowing the noise before it reached my ears. I could smell the wet bark of the trees, the faint ire of the old fence that ran beside the path, and beneath it all, something else, a faint sweetness. Rotting apples, maybe. The village was close. I could see the outline of rooftops through the mist. Windows flickering, pale and uncertain. The lights trembled, like something was passing between them. I stopped to listen. Nothing. Just that low hum that lives inside silence. The kind that feels aware. I try to focus on the lanterns instead, their slow rhythm in the fog. One, then another, then another. But the last one, the one near the end of the lane, flickered twice, and went dark. My breath caught in my throat. It was only a lantern, I told myself. A breeze, maybe a loose wire, but there was no breeze. The trees were still. Even the air refused to move. I felt it then, that strange sense that something had just stepped out of sight. Not gone, just waiting. I took another step, and the fog seemed to pull back with me, like it didn't want me there. The hum grew deeper, pressing in against my ears. For a moment I thought I heard footsteps, soft, uneven, not behind me, but beside, somewhere in the fog. The trees leaned closer. Their branches looked like fingers in the dim light. Something brushed my shoulder, cold, damp, but when I turned there was nothing there. I started walking faster. The village should have been right ahead. I could see the walls of the fog, pale shapes moving in the lantern glow, but the path kept stretching. Each step led to another bend I didn't remember. The fog thickened until the world felt paper thin. My heartbeat started to echo in my head, slow, heavy, wet. Somewhere up ahead, a door creaked. A figure, or maybe just a shape of one, passed in front of a window. I could feel it looking out, though I couldn't see its face. I whispered hello, my voice barely more than breath. No answer, just the fog curling tighter around my ankles. Then the smell changed. That sweetness again, stronger now, ripe, almost warm. I realized it wasn't apples. It was something old, something that used to live. The silence around me pulsed. The hum broke into small, sharp bursts, static in my mind. I stepped closer to the nearest house. Its walls were slick with moisture, the paint peeling like skin. Lantern light wavered through the curtains, moving as though someone inside was pacing. But when I pressed my hand against the window, the glass was warm. There was no movement, no pacing, just that same slow flicker, as if the flame itself was breathing. The fog behind me shifted again. This time I didn't turn. I couldn't. It felt like, if I looked, whatever was waiting would see me clearly. The hum softened, became almost tender. I closed my eyes and tried to remember how far the path went, how many steps I had taken, whether I was even walking toward the village anymore. When I opened them again, the lights were gone. No lanterns, no windows, only the pale gray drift of the fog. I tried to retrace my steps, but the stones beneath my feet were different now. Smoother, colder. The fence was gone. The trees had changed too. Thicker, darker, leaning together so close that the sky disappeared. A faint whisper moved through them. Not words, just breath. It brushed the back of my neck and stayed there, like it wanted to see what I would do next. I stood perfectly still. My heartbeat slowed. My breath matched the fog. And in that stillness, I realized the lane had never been a path into the village. It was something else. Something that waited for people to walk too far in. The mist rose around me, pale and endless. I listened one last time, for footsteps, for a voice, for anything familiar, but there was only silence. And then nothing. It was past midnight when I walked through the old square. The air felt hollow, thin enough that each breath carried a taste of stone and rust. The cobblestones were slick beneath my shoes, though it hadn't rained. Just the cold, the kind that clings. I'd never seen the place so empty. No cars, no wind, just the pale lamps leaning over the square, spilling weak yellow light that didn't quite reach the center. The fountain stood in silence. Its basin was cracked dry, and the statues around it seemed to be waiting for something. Their faces, smooth once, were now eaten by time, their eyes hollow. I stopped beside one of them, a child carved in marble, holding what used to be a dove. Someone had broken its wings. The whisper started then. Not loud, not even close. It slipped through the air like breath through teeth, circling the empty square. It didn't sound human, more like the memory of a voice. I turned slowly. Nothing, but the light had changed. It had thinned, stretched. Shadows were bending where they shouldn't. One lantern flickered, once, then stilled again. I could see my own shadow near the fountain's edge, but there was another one beside it, longer. It didn't move with me. I stepped back. It stayed. A soft hum followed, like the air inside a conch shell, low and endless. It pressed against my ears until I felt my pulse in my throat. The whisper returned. Clearer now. It came from the fountain's dry mouth, the echo of water that wasn't there. I leaned closer. My breath clouded the stone, and beneath it the faint rhythm. Drip, 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 but there was no water. Something brushed my ankle. Cold, wet. I looked down. Only my reflection, stretched in the cracked marble, except the reflection blinked. I stumbled back, heart stuttering. The air trembled. For a moment I thought I heard footsteps, soft ones, circling. When I turned, the lamps along the edge of the square had dimmed. All but one, the one beside the statue of the child. It pulsed faintly, like it was breathing. The hum had turned into something else. A low murmur, broken by silence. Words I couldn't make out. They came in waves, rising and fading, until they were right behind me. I didn't dare turn. The air was too heavy, the kind that waits. Then very softly, a sigh. I froze. It brushed past my ear, warm against the cold, and a single word slipped through, so faint I almost missed it. Leave. The light in the square flared just once, and all at once, everything was still again. The fountain was silent, the statues motionless. Even the hum was gone. Only my own breath filled the air, shallow, uneven. I started walking, slowly at first, then faster. The cobblestones seemed to stretch beneath me, each step echoing too long, like I was walking a room much larger than the square. When I reached the edge, I looked back. The square was empty again, perfectly still, except one lamp was still pulsing. A faint glow, as if something inside it was watching me leave. The whisper followed me down the street, just a trace carried on the wind, soft enough to doubt. But I heard it. I know I did. And before it faded completely, I thought I saw a movement in the fountain's basin. Something dark, rising from where water used to be. I didn't stop. The sound of my footsteps was the only thing that felt real. But even then, each step echoed twice. Once for me, and once for whatever stayed behind. It was early November. The air hung heavy with that kind of cold that didn't move. It just settled in your bones. Then sat alone on the hill, swallowed by fog. Its windows were shuttered tight, as if trying to keep something inside. But pale light still leaked through the cracks, faint and trembling. I stopped at the gate. The sign above the door was faded. Ashmere in. The paint curled like peeling skin. No one had stayed there in years. Yet something moved inside. A rocking chair. Back and forth. Back and forth. Slowly. Patiently. I could hear the soft scrape of wood against wood. It was steady, almost human. I told myself it was a wind, but the trees outside were still. No leaves, no motion, no breath. Only the faint hum of that chair. The door resisted at first. Then it gave, with a sigh that felt too alive. The smell hit me, dust, dampness, something old and sour hiding beneath the floorboards. I stepped in. The air changed. It pressed close, like it wanted to listen. Each board groaned under my feet, slow and uncertain. The pale light I'd seen from outside was spilling through the cracks in the shutters. It wasn't candlelight. It wasn't the moon. It had that strange stillness of something that doesn't want to be found. I moved toward it. My hand brushed a chair, and the fabric left a film of cold dust on my skin. The rocking chair stood near the hearth, still now, facing the dark corner of the room. I waited. Something inside me wanted to see it move again, to prove that it had. But silence stretched thin like a held breath. Then a soft creak from above. Footsteps. Measured. Unhurried. Someone was walking in the room upstairs. The old staircase leaned under my weight as I climbed. Each step sank a little deeper than it should have. I kept my hand along the banister. It was slick, like something damp had brushed against it. At the top of the stairs, the corridor waited. Long, narrow, lined with doors that didn't want to open. The pale light followed me, leaking through the cracks in the ceiling, tracing thin veins of white across the floorboards. Another footstep, right above me this time. But the roof was too low for anyone to stand there. Still, it came again. A slow drag. A pause. And then nothing. I opened the nearest door. The room was small. A single bed collapsed inward. Curtains rotted into lace. And by the window, another chair, rocking. I couldn't see what moved it, but the air around it pulsed softly, like breath drawn through teeth. The shutters rattled, though there was no wind. Light spilled through again, white and thin. I stepped closer. My reflection flickered in the cracked glass of the window, but there was someone else standing behind me, still watching. When I turned, the chair stopped. The air was empty again. The boards beneath me whispered, then groaned, and from somewhere deep inside the walls, a quiet thud answered. Something alive in the dark, listening, waiting for me to move again. I wanted to leave, but the hallway behind me was gone, replaced by the same room, again and again. Every door I opened showed the same faded bed, the same rocking chair, the same pale light, sliding through a split shutter. My breath fogged in front of me. The inn had begun to breathe with me. When the rocking started again, I didn't look. I just stood there, listening to it grow slower, softer, until it almost matched the rhythm of my heart. Then it stopped. Silence filled everything. A silence so thick I could almost hear it pulse. The pale light flickered once, and went out. I felt the room exhale, and all at once, the shutters clapped open. Cold air rushed in, scattering dust like ash. Moonlight fell on the floorboards, clean, white, and empty. The chair was still. No marks. No dust disturbed. Downstairs, the front door creaked open on its own. I didn't question it. I just walked out, my steps muffled by the fog. From the road, I looked back. The shutters had closed again. Tight, but a soft light still pulsed between the cracks. And inside, through that narrow glow, the chair began to move once more. Slowly, patiently, as if waiting for someone to return. It was past midnight when I took the wrong turn. The street lamps ended behind me, swallowed by fog. Ahead, a narrow gap split the row of houses, just wide enough for one person to walk through. An alley, dark and silent. The air felt colder there. It smelled of wet stone and something faintly metallic. I could hear water dripping somewhere, steady, patient, like a clock. I told myself to keep walking. It was only a shortcut, only a passage between homes. But as I stepped in, the light behind me faded, and the air seemed to close in around my shoulders. The walls leaned inward. Their bricks were slick with moisture, paint peeled in long, curling strips like skin. Each breath echoed, too loud, too alone, Halfway through, I noticed something strange. The shadows weren't still. They bent and twisted along the walls. As if stirred by wind I couldn't feel. When I blinked, they shifted again, bending toward me. Listening, I stopped. There was no sound now. Not even my own heartbeat. Only that steady drip, closer than before. I whispered a small breath, and something answered. Not a voice, not quite. Just breathing. Faint, measured, coming from the dark ahead. I froze. Every hair on my neck lifted. The air trembled in my lungs. Someone was there, breathing with me. I waited for a shape, for a movement. Anything, but the alley stayed still. Empty, dead quiet. Then the breathing shifted. It was no longer in front of me. It was behind, my chest locked. I didn't dare turn around. I just stared at the end of the alley. A pale square of moonlight between two houses. It felt impossibly far. One step, then another, slow, careful. Behind me, the breaths matched mine. Inhale, exhale. Too human to be wind, too close to be memory. A soft scrape brushed the stone, like bare feet moving through grit. I quickened my pace. The echo followed. The walls seemed to stretch now, the end of the alley slipping further away each time I blinked. I could smell something sweet and rotten, like wet flowers left too long in a vase. My pulse thudded against my throat. I reached out a hand to steady myself. The wall was damp and warm. I pulled back, but my fingertips came away darker. Sticky. It wasn't water. Somewhere behind me, something sighed. Long, hollow, almost tired. And then silence again. I started to run, but my footsteps didn't echo. Only the sound behind me did. Running, too. The pale square ahead flickered, as if the night itself was breathing in and out. I could feel something brushing against the back of my coat. Cold fingers, or air moving the wrong way. I reached the end, burst into the street, and turned around. The alley looked smaller from here. Empty. Still, nothing but a narrow throat of shadow. But as I stood there, trying to breathe, I realized the fog had changed. It drifted out from the mouth of the alley like smoke, curling around my shoes. And in the haze, I saw a movement, a figure, thin, bent slightly forward as though watching. Its edges flickered like static on glass. Each time I blinked, it leaned closer. The breathing returned. Not from the alley now, but from the fog itself. It surrounded me, soft and constant, as if the air had lungs. I stepped back. The fog followed. One more step, and I heard the drip again, right beside my ear this time. I turned, fast, but there was only empty street and the hum of a single flickering lamp. When I looked back, the alley was gone. The space where it had been was a blank wall of bricks. No gap, no opening, just smooth stone, still wet, as though it had just sealed itself shut. I stood there for a long time, listening. The street was quiet. The wind had stopped. Even the city beyond fell asleep. But when I finally forced myself to walk away, I could still hear it, a faint, measured breathing, following me through the fog. And when I looked down at my hand, the dark stain from the wall was still there, warm, fresh, as if the alley had marked me, so it would know where I was. And somewhere behind the walls, it was still breathing. The path to the chapel was overgrown. Grass brushed against my legs, damp with dew. The air smelled like rain that never came. Through the trees, I saw it, a shape half swallowed by fog. Stone walls leaning inward, like the forest had been slowly breathing it in. The doors were cracked open, barely, enough for a whisper to pass through. Inside, candles flickered. Their flames swayed, even though there was no wind. I stepped in carefully. Each footfall stirred up dust that drifted like pale smoke. The pews were warped, dark with age. Something sticky clung to the wood when I brushed my hand against it. The air was colder here. It pressed against my skin, slow and deliberate, like fingers. Somewhere beneath the silence, a hum, not loud, more like a vibration in my chest. A low chant, drawn out, distant and distorted. I thought it came from the altar, but when I listened, it moved, sliding behind the walls, beneath the floorboards, above the rafters. The candles burned unevenly. Some had melted into the floor, their wax forming pale puddles that caught the faint light. Others dripped in slow motion, each drop stretching before it fell. I didn't remember lighting them. No one did. The stained glass windows were clouded with grime, but through the gray colors I could still see faint shapes. Faces, pressed close from the other side. Not carved, not painted, just there. I tried to breathe quietly. The air had a taste like ashes and salt. Something old and damp clung to the back of my throat. The chanting grew steadier. A rhythm I couldn't follow. Too slow to be human. Too constant to be wind. When I turned, the doorway was smaller. The fog had crept closer, curling around the threshold like a living thing. I wanted to leave, but the aisle stretched longer than before. Every step I took seemed to echo twice, once from my feet and once from somewhere behind me. The cross above the altar had fallen. It leaned sideways, its metal edges rusted and red. A single candle burned beneath it, its flame bending backward, away from the wick. The hum stopped. Silence fell like dust, thick, choking, filling the space between my heartbeats. Then a breath. Not mine, just one, drawn slow and shallow, from behind the pews. I froze. Something shifted in the corner. Wood creaked, and the candle nearest to it flickered out. The shadows stretched, their edges too sharp. The air trembled again, not from sound, but from movement. A faint vibration through the floorboards, like footsteps buried beneath the earth. I backed away. My fingers brushed against the wall, and the stone was wet. When I pulled my hand back, there was wax on my skin, still warm. Another candle went out, then another. The darkness didn't come all at once. It crept in, candle by candle, leaving trails of faint smoke that twisted upward. I could still see the altar, but barely. A shape stood beside it now, thin, still, facing the wall. I couldn't tell if it was a person. It didn't move, didn't breathe. The last candle sputtered. The flame stretched tall, as if something leaned close to it, and then it vanished. Blackness, pure and heavy. For a long time, nothing, only the faint hum, somewhere deep in the walls, rising again, not distant anymore. Inside the room, inside my chest, I felt a warmth near my ear, a whisper, too soft to understand, but it said my name. The pew behind me groaned, then the one beside it, like something crawling between them. My hand brushed the doorframe, but it was gone. Only the cold wall met my palm. The whisper grew louder, overlapping, like many voices breathing the same word, over and over. My name, then quiet. I opened my eyes. The fog had thinned. Morning light slipped through the cracks in the roof. The pews were empty again. The candles melted flat. I walked out without looking back. The forest was still. Even the birds refused to sing. At the treeline, I turned once more. The doors were closed now. A faint light moved behind them, soft, unsteady, like a flame that shouldn't exist. And the hum still followed me, long after the chapel was gone. It stands at the edge of the village, covered in moss, half swallowed by weeds. The old stone well. No one goes near it anymore. Not since the drought. Not since the splashes began. The air around it feels colder, like it holds its own season. Even the birds don't land there. They circle above, then vanish into the trees. I walk past it every evening on my way home. The path curves close, too close, and I always feel it watching. A ring of damp stones, a rim dark with rust and age. Sometimes when the wind moves, I hear it, a faint splash, then another, like something shifting beneath the surface. But there is no water down there. There hasn't been for years. The drought emptied everything. The fields, the river, even the sky. Yet from the well, I still hear ripples, soft and patient. Last night, I stopped. I don't know why. The air was still, no crickets, no leaves, just a low hum of dusk. I leaned closer. The stones felt damp beneath my hand, slick like skin. I listened. Splash. A slow one this time. Deeper, heavier. Something brushed against the inside wall, like a hand dragging along stone. I stepped back. My heart was quiet, almost too quiet, as if afraid to make a sound. The village well. It had been sealed once, years ago. Then someone broke the lid. They said the children did it. Curious about the echo. Now the lid lies cracked beside it, and the rope, once used for buckets, hangs frayed like hair. At dawn, the fog rolls through the fields and gathers around the well. It never reaches the houses, just circles at one spot, turning the air pale and heavy. I've started dreaming about it. I stand at the edge. The moss spreads at my feet, and the air smells like wet metal. When I look down, there's movement, not water, but something pale just beneath the surface. It moves slow, like breathing. Then I wake up, and the pillow's damp, as if I'd been standing in the fog again. Today I went back. The village was silent. Even the wind felt cautious. The stones around the rim were warm. But when I placed my hand above the opening, the air was freezing. My breath drifted down into the dark. And from below, another breath came back, like something exhaling in rhythm. With me, I stared until my eyes burned. The shadows swayed. Something shimmered. A faint reflection, a shape too white to belong to the stone. I blinked, and it was gone. Just darkness again. Just that echoing splash. The rope shifted. It shouldn't have moved. There was no wind, but it did. A small, trembling motion. Then it began to creak, slowly, as if something was climbing. I stepped back until my heel hit the dirt road. The sound stopped. The air felt thick, wet with silence. I could hear my own pulse, loud in my ears. And then a whisper, not a voice, more like a breath pressing against the inside of my head. It said nothing I could understand, just a hush, a tone that pulled at me like the tide. I don't remember walking home, just the feeling of being followed, not footsteps, not breathing, something softer, like the sound of dripping water behind me. Tonight, the well smell is stronger, rust and moss. It's drifting through the air, finding its way into my room. I tried closing the window, but it's still there, in the walls, in my clothes. When I blink, I see the pale shape again just at the edge of my sight. I keep hearing it, that same gentle splash, over and over like a heartbeat. I think the well remembers everything that fell inside it, every name, every sound. And now it remembers me. I can feel the air shifting again, thick, cold, pulling toward the floor. There's water somewhere. Clothes. I hear it moving, dripping, breathing. I look at the window, but the reflection staring back isn't mine. It's pale, wet, and smiling. The same one from the well. I close my eyes. The splash has stopped. The air holds still, but I can still feel it, waiting. Somewhere beneath the rust and stone, something knows my name now, and it's patient. So patient. The fog had been thicker that week. It clung to the hills, spilling down into the fields until even the fences looked like bones buried in smoke. I remember standing at the edge of the path, where the last lantern burned pale against the night. That's where the village ended, and the forest began. The trees there don't move like the ones close to the farms. They lean, listening. Every branch seems to know your name. The air was cold enough to sting. Wet moss under my boots, soft and sinking. Somewhere in the distance, something shifted, a low, heavy drag through the undergrowth. I froze, breath caught halfway out. The fog pulsed with each heartbeat. We'd all been warned not to go beyond the perimeter. Old fences, half-buried posts. They weren't meant to keep anything out. They were meant to keep something in. Still, I'd follow the path anyway, because that's where the growl had come from the night before. Deep, like the earth itself had breathed. The village dogs hadn't barked. They never did anymore. The silence after dusk was different here. Too full, too expectant. Even the wind hesitated, brushing against the roofs and then stopping, as if afraid to enter. That night, I walked past the last fence post. Mud swallowed my steps. Every inhale carried the scent of wet bark and iron, and underneath it, something faintly sweet like rotting fruit. I heard it again, that hum, low and long, rolling between the trees until it settled in my chest. I tried to tell myself it was the hills echoing, that the sound was only wind bending through the valley. But wind doesn't growl. And it doesn't stop when you stop. I turned slowly. The fog pressed in, swallowing the path behind me. Only the faint glow of the village lantern remained, trembling, distant. It looked smaller than I remembered. Then movement, just beyond the first line of trees. A ripple through the fog, like someone crawling. My hand brushed against the fence post, rough, splintered with slick with dew. And beneath the damp bark, it was warm. I pulled away. There was a hum underneath the wood. A pulse, almost like breathing. I stepped back. The air around me shivered. Leaves rustled even though there was no wind. The growl deepened, not loud, not near, but everywhere. Something scraped against the ground. Slow, deliberate, a rhythm. Too measured to be an animal. I wanted to run, but the fog had a weight. It pressed against my legs, thick as cloth. And then I saw it, between the trees, a shape darker than the fog itself. Crouched low, its edges blurred, as if the mist didn't want to touch it. It swayed slightly. Listening, breathing. I didn't move. I couldn't. It leaned forward, just enough for me to see what wasn't there. No eyes, no face, only a hollow curve where light bent wrong. A thin, what inhale slid through the air. Closed now, right beside the fence. The post beside me trembled. The hum in it grew louder. The ground beneath it cracked softly, releasing the smell of wet soil and metal. Then silence. No hum, no growl, only the quiet drip of fog from the branches. I stepped backward, slow enough not to break. Whatever held that moment still. The figure in the mist didn't follow. It just straightened, as if remembering its shape. And then it turned, melting into the fog, leaving only that faint sweetness behind. When I reached the village gate again, the lantern's flame had nearly gone out. The dogs were awake now, staring toward the hills. Not barking, just staring. By morning, there were marks along the perimeter, long grooves in the mud, following the fence line in a perfect circle, as if something had walked the entire border, testing it. The elders burned incense near the post that day. They whispered about the forest shifting closer each year. No one went near the edge after dusk. But sometimes, when the fog rolls in too early, you can still hear it. That low hum, crawling beneath the soil, waiting just beyond the lantern light. It was late, the kind of late where even the air forgets how to move. The street outside my window looked hollow. Every house had gone dark hours ago. Only the weak yellow of the street lamp kept its quiet watch. I don't know why I was still awake. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was that feeling, like the night was holding its breath. Then I saw it, far down the road to light. Not bright, not steady, just a small, trembling glow moving slowly toward me. It flickered as it swayed. And for a long time, I thought it might be someone walking home, until I noticed the way the shadows stretched. They didn't fall behind the light. They followed it, clinging to walls, to fences, to the ground. Long, warped things that reached out as the figure passed. The lantern's glow touched the pavement like water spilling over stone. Soft, uneven, it moved closer, step by step. The figure was wrapped in a coat too long for its frame. The lantern hung from a bone-pale hand. The hood covered everything else. Every few feet, the light dimmed, and the cold came with it. It wasn't the kind of cold that bit. It was the kind that crept, the kind that finds its way beneath your skin. I could see my breath against the glass. But the trees didn't move. Not a leaf, not a whisper. The figure stopped in front of the old house across the street. The lantern tilted slightly, as if listening. The glow reached the wooden porch, and the door seemed to breathe. Just once, the wood flexing in and out, like lungs remembering something. My hand was shaking now. I didn't know why. The figure hadn't looked up, hadn't moved. Still, it felt like I was being watched. The lantern flared once, then went dim again, and the street grew quieter, heavier. A moth circled the glass of my window, its wings tapping softly. Even that small sound felt wrong. Too loud, too alive. When I blinked, the figure had turned, facing my side of the street. The light beneath the hood was faint, but I thought I saw something pale. Not a face, just the shape of one. The lantern tilted again. The flame inside barely moved, like it was holding itself still. My window began to fog from my breathing. Each exhale a cloud between me and the night. But through it, I saw the figure take another step. Then another, and another. The shadows stretched before it, reaching across the asphalt like fingers dragging through dust. Every light in the street, every weak bulb, every porch lamp, flickered once, then died. All that was left was the lantern, and it was close now, close enough that I could hear it. Not footsteps, something softer, like the whisper of cloth brushing against damp earth. I stepped back from the window. The cold followed. The figure stopped at the edge of my yard. Lantern lifted, flame trembling. It felt like the air was bending around it, like the night had weight now, and all of it pressed against my chest. Then the lantern went out. Darkness. Complete. Total. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Only feel that awful silence, like the world had forgotten how to make noise. And then a soft click. Light returned, faint and weak, the lantern's glow spilling just enough to show where it stood. But the figure wasn't there anymore. Only the lantern, swaying in the cold wind that hadn't been there a moment ago. It hung at the edge of my yard, moving slightly as if someone invisible still held it. The shadows were gone. The street was empty, but the cold didn't leave. Not for hours. When the sun rose, the lantern was still there, lying on its side, glass cracked, the flame long dead. I never touched it. No one did. By afternoon, it was gone, just an imprint in the frost where it had been. But at night, if I stand at the window and the world goes still again, sometimes I see a pale light at the end of the road, moving, slowly, the lantern bearer walking the same path, as if searching for something they never found. It stood alone at the edge of the village, a small house. Its roof sagged inward like something tired of standing. The windows were black. Not broken, just dark, so dark they looked painted shut. The door hung slightly open. A quiet breath escaped from inside, cold and wet. It smelled of damp wood, and something faintly burnt, like the ghost of old smoke. I shouldn't have gone closer, but the wind pushed me forward. The tall grass brushed my legs, whispering against the fabric of my coat. Each step felt softer, like the earth beneath me wanted to keep my footsteps a secret. When I reached the porch, the boards bent inside. It wasn't just the weight of my body. It felt like the house itself was exhaling. I touched the door. The wood was swollen with moisture, slick beneath my fingertips. The metal handle was cold. Not the kind of cold from air, but from absence. I pushed it open. Inside was smaller than it should have been. The air felt thick. Every breath scraped a little. A chair stood in the corner, its legs uneven, one shorter than the others. It rocked gently just once, then stopped. There was no wind, no movement. Yet something had changed when I blinked. The chair wasn't in the corner anymore. It had turned toward me. My chest tightened. The smell of smoke deepened, curling through the stillness. Old ashes, damp hearth, forgotten warmth. I whispered, though I didn't mean to, "Is someone here?" The air answered with a hush, a long, patient silence that made the walls seem closer. I stepped deeper in. The floorboards pulsed beneath my shoes, creaking softly, rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. A photo hung crooked on the wall. The image was faded, blurred with moisture. A family, maybe, but their faces were smudged away, as if the paper refused to remember them. I turned, and the photo frame straightened itself. Not quickly, just enough to make my breath stutter. Something brushed my sleeve, like fingertips, light, deliberate. But when I looked down, only dust floated there. The ceiling groaned, a slow, bending sound, like an old man turning in his sleep. Tiny flakes of paint drifted through the air. The house was moving, but too gently to see. It was as if everything inside was breathing in the same rhythm. I walked toward the small kitchen. Plates lined the counter, mismatched, chipped, all turned upside down. Water dripped somewhere unseen. Each drop echoed a little too long before fading. The smell changed again. Now metallic, now sweet, now gone. I touched the edge of the counter and froze. The plates had turned. Every single one, face up now, perfectly arranged. My pulse thudded in my throat. The air pressed against me, heavier, closer. In the hallway, a door creaked open by itself. Not wide, just enough for a sliver of dark. I could see a shape in there. Not a person, not really, but an outline where the light refused to fall. A hollow in the room's air. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The outline tilted, slowly, like it was curious. And then it stepped back into dark. The quiet afterward was almost warm, like the moment after thunder fades. I should have left. I knew that, but something in the silence kept me still. It wasn't threatening. It was waiting. In that stillness, I realized the house wasn't empty. It wasn't haunted either. It was remembering. Every shift, every small movement was a house trying to set things right. A chair turned toward the window. A photo straightened. Plates aligned, as if unseen hands were tidying up before someone came home. The air changed again, softer this time. The smell of rain, faint and new. I stepped backward. The floor groaned once, then stilled. The door closed behind me on its own. Quietly, gently. From the outside, the house looked exactly the same. Small, dark, waiting. But the windows, they weren't black anymore. They reflected pale light, like something inside had finally opened its eyes. And as I turned to leave, I heard one more soft sound from within, a chair moving back into place. Then silence. The bridge has always been there. At least it feels that way. Stone laid into the earth, older than the road itself. Cold under my palms, damp with moss. Even in daylight, it holds a kind of shadow, something that lingers after you walk away. I came here at dusk. The air was heavy, thick with the wet breath of the river below. Mist clung to my shoes, to my sleeves, curling upward in slow, silver threads. The water beneath barely moved, a surface like oil, dark enough that it almost looked solid. But when I leaned over, it changed. The shapes beneath it, they moved, slowly at first, then quicker. Not fish, not debris, something heavier. My reflection bent with the current. Another face floated beside mine, pale, still, blurred by the ripples. When I blinked, it sank. The bridge groaned under my weight. Every step echoed down the arches. The sound didn't fade. It folded back like the stone was breathing. I stopped halfway. The mist grew thicker there. I could taste it, metallic, like old pennies pressed against tongue. Somewhere below, the water stirred. A single ripple broke the surface, spreading wide. Then another. I leaned over again. Shapes gathered, twisting together, like long shadows under glass. Arms, maybe, or ropes. I couldn't tell. The longer I stared, the quieter the world became. No birds, no crickets, just the hum of the bridge, low and steady, pulsing through my boots. I whispered something. I don't remember what, and the mist answered. It moved toward me, slow, deliberate, curling around my neck, my wrists, cold as sleep. The river below wasn't black anymore. It was open like a mouth. Something waited just beneath the surface, moving with the same rhythm as my breath. When I stepped back, the stone shifted. A hollow sound, like a heartbeat caught in the rock. Then stillness. I thought I saw a hand, reaching up from the water, but maybe it was mine, reflected wrong, stretched by the ripples. The bridge felt longer than before. Every step away from the center made the air thinner. The mist didn't follow this time. It just watched. By the time I reached the end, the last light was gone. Only the pale outline of the arch behind me, swallowed by fog. I turned once more, and in the dim glow, I saw a movement beneath the stone, a shimmer, soft and human-shaped, drifting upward. The river swallowed it again. Now, when I walk past this place, I don't look down, but I feel it, that quiet pulse beneath the earth, like something waiting for me to lean closer. The bridge is always damp, always humming, and the mist still curls upward, as if remembering the shape of my breath. It was almost evening when I reached the market. The sky had turned the color of old bruises, deep purple, fading into gray. The air carried that strange stillness that comes before rain. Every sound felt trapped. The The stalls stood in long rows, like ribs of something long dead. Their tarps hung loose, edges frayed, fluttering gently though the air was still. A faint smell of rust and wet cloth clung to everything. I thought I heard a voice, or maybe just the fabric shifting against its poles. The kind of noise that makes you turn around, slowly. But no one was there. The paths between stalls were narrow. Empty tables, overturned crates, faint tracks in the dust. Someone had been here recently. Or maybe they never left. A pale strip of light slipped through the torn roof above, and for a moment I could see dust swirling like faint ghosts. It moved in spirals, soft, patient, as if breathing. I walked further in. Each step echoed strangely, like the ground remembered others walking here. I brushed against the tarp. It was damp, sticky in some places. My fingertips came away darker. I didn't want to look at what stained them. The rustling started again, this time closer, like someone brushing through fabric, just out of sight. I froze. The air thickened, that silent pressure, the kind that fills your chest and slows your breathing. I could hear the faint clink of something metallic swinging on a hook. Once, twice, then still. A stall near the corner caught my eye. Its tarp was torn wide open, revealing what looked like a display of jars. But they were empty, every single one, each with a layer of gray dust on the inside, as though something had once been alive there. The next stall had old fruits, blackened, shriveled, but somehow intact, their skins wrinkled tight, like dried faces. A faint hum vibrated in the air, not from any machine, but from beneath the ground. I wanted to turn back, but the path behind me didn't look the same anymore. The way out was gone, or hidden. The aisle stretched further now, new stalls that hadn't been there before. I told myself it was a trick of the light, that I'd looped around by accident. Then a whisper, soft, close, right behind one of the tarps. I couldn't understand the words, but they carried that rhythm of speech, slow, wet breaths between each sound. I backed away. My shoulder brushed another hanging sheet. It swayed lightly, and something underneath it swayed back. The hum grew louder, now pulsing, a low vibration beneath my feet, as though the entire market had begun to breathe. I saw movement, a shadow sliding between stalls. Long, narrow, too fluid to belong to anyone real. The tarps fluttered again, every one of them, like something was passing through, brushing its way along each row. The smell changed from damper to something metallic, sharp, like coins left to rot in rainwater. I tried to move faster, but the path bent again. Stalls repeated, their signs unreadable, letters smeared as though written in fog. A lantern flickered somewhere ahead, the light weak and yellow, trembling. I followed it, because it was the only thing left that looked real. It hung above a small counter, and beneath it sat a mirror, cracked, clouded. When I leaned closer, I didn't see myself right away, just a gray blur, like smoke pressed behind glass. Then a shape moved behind me in the reflection, tall, still, its face hidden beneath the folds of a hanging tarp. I turned. Nothing, just that slow, endless rustle of fabric. When I looked back, the mirror was clean, my reflection clear, but the lantern had gone out. Darkness felt like a closing door. The hum stopped, and in that silence, the air trembled once, like something exhaling. I could hear faint footsteps now, but not mine. They circled, soft, measured, moving stall to stall. I waited, barely breathing. The last fluttered tarp brushed my arm again, cold this time, like wet skin. And then nothing. The market stood still, frozen in a half-light between dusk and night. When I finally stepped out, the air outside felt wrong. Too warm, too clean. The street behind me was empty. No stalls, no tarps, just an open lot of dirt and weeds. I turned once more, trying to find where I had come from, but the market was gone. Only the faint smell of rust remained. And somewhere far off, a single piece of fabric fluttered, slowly, patiently, like it was waiting to open again. It was past dusk when I found the schoolhouse again. The field around was overgrown, weeds curling through cracks, whispering in the wind. The air was still, too still. The building leaned against the horizon like it had been waiting. Windows broken, edges sharp with dried rain. The last light of the evening slid through the empty frames, catching on dust and glass. Everything inside was gray. My footsteps echoed. The wood beneath me groaned, like the floorboards were sighing relief or warning. Desks stood where they had been left decades ago. Some toppled, some perfectly still, all covered in layers of dust, so thick they looked like frost. There was a faint hum, low, constant. At first, I thought it was the wind between the beams. But the windows were shattered, no glass left to trap the air. I followed it. The hum seemed to come from the front of the room, near the blackboard. It wasn't quite a sound, more like a vibration, something you felt in your teeth, in your chest. It pulsed, slow and steady, as if the walls were breathing. I stood in front of the blackboard. The chalk tray was still there, half buried in grime. The writing was gone, erased by time. But the surface, the black surface, seemed to move. It shimmered, faintly, like oil on water. The hum deepened. Across the walls, shadows began to stir. At first, they matched my movements. When I turned my head, they turned theirs. When I stepped back, they followed. But then, they didn't. They kept moving when I stopped, sliding along the plaster in perfect rhythm with that low hum, like dancers without faces, like memories still rehearsing a moment that never ended. The air thickened. It tasted of chalk and rust, the kind of dryness that clings to the back of your throat. I tried to swallow. It hurt. The blackboard began to tremble, not violently, just enough to shift the dust on its surface. Lines appeared where the grime fell away. I could see faint letters forming one by one. Stay. My breath caught. The hum rose. Louder now, no longer in the walls, but in me. It filled my chest until it felt like my ribs might crack. Every desk in the room began to creak, not all at once, but one after another, like children standing for attendance. The shadows twisted, overlapping each other. One reached across the floor, long, broken, stretching toward me. It stopped just short of my feet. And then silence, not the quiet kind, the heavy kind that swallows everything else, the kind that feels alive. I looked back at the blackboard. The word was gone. Only the faint outline remained, wet, somehow glistening like fresh ink. The hum had stopped, but something else had taken its place. A faint tapping from behind the board. Tap, pause, tap, tap. I wanted to leave, but my body wouldn't listen. The air pressed in, warm and cold at once. It smelled like old paper. And faintly, something sweet. The blackboard began to crack. Tiny fractures spreading from the center outward. Behind it, something moved, something pale. The tapping grew frantic. The shadow on the floor stretched again, wider, reaching past the desks, the walls. And then it stopped, just like that. Everything froze. The air eased. The cracks sealed themselves, leaving no trace. I stepped back. My shoes left prints in the dust. When I turned to leave, all the desks were facing me. Not the door. Me. Their legs scraped faintly, as if they just shifted when I blinked. The hum returned, softer this time, almost comforting. Almost. I walked out into the night. The weeds brushed against my ankles, whispering against the dark. When I looked back, the windows glowed faintly, like eyes, and somewhere inside that hollow building, the hum followed me home. The tower stands at the far edge of the village. Cold stone, pale moss climbing its sides like veins beneath the skin. No one goes there anymore. They say the clock stopped 100 years ago. But some nights, it still ticks. I first heard it in late autumn, when the fog came in low and soft, and the air tasted of metal and rain. The village was quiet, too quiet. Even the stray dogs had gone still. I followed the faint rhythm through the empty square. Tick, tick, tick. Each beat felt slower than the one before, as if the air itself had weight. The iron gate at the base of the tower hung crooked, its hinges groaning like something alive. Inside it smelled of rust and dust, like old breath trapped for centuries. I climbed the spiral stairs. Each step bent slightly under my feet, the echo curling upward into darkness. The ticking was clearer now, steady, impossible. No gears, no pendulum, just that hollow pulse. Halfway up, I thought I saw a movement. A figure, pale and slow, turning the corner above me. The air trembled, a faint rustling, like fabric brushing stone. When I reached the bend, nothing waited there. Only the winding path continuing higher, swallowed in shadow. The light from my lantern shook across the walls. Marks etched into the stone, lines crossing, looping, circles that didn't close. They looked fresh, wet even, as if carved with something sharper than a blade. Tick, tick, tick. I pressed my palm to the wall. It was warm, beating faintly like a heart. By the time I reached the top, my breath was a thin, trembling sound. The room was small, round, its windows broken, fog spilling through like pale smoke. The great clock face stood before me. The hands were still frozen at 12. And yet, somewhere inside its gears, something moved. A faint hum, then a sigh. I stepped closer. The glass was cracked, long splinters spreading outward, like veins around an eye. Behind it, I thought I saw someone standing. Still, head tilted slightly. I blinked. The space was empty. Only my reflection remained, distorted, delayed by a heartbeat. The ticking stopped. Silence filled the tower so suddenly I could hear the small sound of myself. Clothing shifting, breath dragging slow. Then the clock hands twitched. Just once. Enough to scrape the glass. The figure behind the face was back. Closer now. Its hand reached toward mine. Through the glass, through time. I stepped back, but the air had thickened. The floor felt soft, almost breathing. The fog pressed against my back, whispering. It smelled faintly of rain and smoke and dusted skin. I ran, down the spiral, the ticking chasing me like footsteps. Each beat slower, heavier, until it matched my own pulse. At the base, I turned, expecting to see nothing, but something watched from above, between the slats of broken wood. Still, listening, when I reached the village square, the air was calm again. No ticking, only the faint hum of the night insects and the wet stone beneath my shoes. I looked up once more. The clock tower stood silent, its face pale against the stars. But the hands, they weren't frozen anymore. They had moved, just enough to mark the moment I had entered. And every night since, the ticking starts again. Slow, measured, like it's keeping time with me. The courtyard was colder than the rest of the grounds. Even in daylight, it never felt awake. The stones were old, worn smooth by rain and years of footsteps that no one remembered anymore. They circled the courtyard like tired sentries, the walls high and colorless. The air carried the faint taste of dust and iron. I stepped through the archway, and everything went quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ribs. The leaves in the corner didn't move. No birds, no breeze, only that low hum, soft at first, like something buried deep in the walls. It drifted through the air, steady, patient. It felt alive. I thought it came from the far side of the courtyard, near the old fountain. The basin was cracked, water long gone. Still, I could smell the wet stone, the trace of algae that shouldn't exist. The hum pulsed faintly against my skin, like it was breathing. I stopped walking. The shadows along the walls shifted, not moving fast, not reaching yet, just swaying in a rhythm that didn't match the light. Their edges were too soft, like fog trying to decide what shape to take. I looked up. The sky above the courtyard was pale, almost white. No sun, just that dull glow that hides the hour. The hum grew louder. I could feel it in my teeth now, in my chest. It wasn't angry, but it wanted something. I stepped closer to the center, where the stones met in a circular pattern. The ground dipped slightly, uneven beneath my shoes. Someone had carved lines into the floor, faint and winding, like roots or veins. I traced one with my finger. It was warm. That's when the shadows began to stretch. Slowly, deliberately, they reached toward the middle, toward me, as though drawn to the sound I couldn't stop hearing. The hum flickered, trembled, then deepened. For a moment, it became a note, low and human, before breaking apart again. And then, silence. The air froze. I could hear my heartbeat echo against the walls. A single breath of wind passed through the archway behind me. carrying the scent of ash. Every window overlooking the courtyard was black. I was sure they'd been there before, glass reflecting light. Maybe a curtain stirring, but now they were hollow, empty frames, dark openings that watched. Something in the center stone shifted under my hand. Not a vibration, more like a pulse, a faint thud, like a buried heart remembering itself. I wanted to step back, but the ground felt soft, as if the stones had turned to soil beneath me. The hum returned, quieter this time, inside my ears, inside my breath. It whispered through the silence, a note caught between words. I don't know if it was calling my name, or asking me to listen. The shadows reached the circle's edge. Their tips curled upward, as though rising from the floor, bending toward me. They had no faces, only form, only intent. I could smell them now, the scent of cold smoke and old rain. The air felt heavier, folding on itself. I whispered something, I don't remember what, and the hum stopped. Completely. The silence that followed was too sharp. It rang through my skull, pressing down behind my eyes. I could almost hear the absence of it, the echo of what had been there. Then, one by one, the shadows retreated, back along the walls, back into their places, folding neatly into the corners like they had never moved. The air loosened. The color returned, faint, gray, washed out. The courtyard looked the same again. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching from beneath the stones. Something old. Something that had been waiting for someone to listen. I left the courtyard slowly, my footsteps quiet against the worn path. The archway was just ahead. Light filtered through it, soft and trembling, like morning after storm. But as I crossed beneath it, I heard it again, a faint hum. Behind me, not in the air this time, in the stone, deep, patient, alive. I didn't look back. It was early evening when I passed through the village square. The air felt heavier here, like it carried whispers. The well stood in the center, old stones blackened with moss. The rope frayed and still damp. There was no wind, yet the bucket swayed, creaking softly. The water inside shimmered, just faintly moving. No one else was around. The houses nearby had their shutters closed tight. I remember thinking, it looked like the village was holding its breath. I stepped closer. Gravel shifted under my boots, small echoes trailing into the fog. The smell of wet earth rose around me, thick and cold. I leaned over the edge. The stones were slick. Down below, I saw only darkness and the faintest ring of light reflecting from the sky. Then ripples, gentle at first, circling outward. But there was nothing to cause them. I waited. My breath came out white and slow. Every sound seemed to pull away from me, like the air itself didn't want to be here. The ripples grew stronger. Then the surface stilled, perfectly flat. The silence pressed against my ears until I could hear my own pulse. And then it happened. Something pale broke the surface. A hand, small, thin, almost translucent in the dying light. It reached up, fingers bending weakly toward the rim, just enough of the water to trail down, slow and silver, between each bone. I froze. The hand stayed there, hovering, trembling, like it was waiting for me to move closer. Then it slipped back under. The water swallowed it without a sound. No splash, no ripple, only stillness. I stepped back. My heel hit the edge of the square, and I almost fell. It was too quiet now, like every bird, every insect had vanished. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't make myself turn away. The well, it seemed deeper than before. I could smell the damp stone, the faint metal tang of something old, something not meant to be disturbed. I whispered, just once, hello. The word disappeared before it reached the bottom. Then the rope twitched. Not a swing, not a gust, just one sudden, sharp movement, like something had tugged from below. I took another step back. The air around the well felt colder now, as if the night itself had gathered there. The bucket began to sway again, softly knocking against the stone. Tap, tap, tap. Each sound stretched longer than the last, until the final tap came from behind me. I turned. No one. Only the faint outline of the path leading out of the square. But in the corner of my eye, The water rippled again. Quick, shallow circles, like breath beneath the surface. I walked away then, slow at first, then faster. Even as I reached the edge of the village, I could feel it, the silence following me, the weight of the well still pulling at the air. Later that night, I heard a creak outside my window, the same slow rhythm as the bucket against stone. When I looked out, the square was empty, but the moonlight caught something faint near the well, a pale shape resting on the rim. It was the hand. Only this time, it wasn't reaching up. It was waving, softly, as if saying goodbye, or asking me to come back. The hill was quiet tonight, too quiet. Mist rolled like a living thing across the grass, clinging to my shoes, swallowing the path behind me. The air was heavy, still, except for the soften of the wind that never seemed to touch the trees. At the top of the slope, a faint light wavered, a lantern, swinging slightly, as if someone had just let it go. Its glow was pale, not golden, not warm, more like something sick trying to look alive. The glass was fogged from within, and I could almost see movement behind it, like a hand brushing past a flame. Every few steps, the light dimmed, and when it did, the darkness around me deepened, pressing close, breathing down my neck. I told myself someone must have left it there. A hiker, maybe, a guard post, something simple. But the closer I walked, the quieter everything became. Even my own footsteps faded. The grass didn't crunch anymore. The night seemed to wait. When I reached the halfway point of the hill, I saw them. Shapes, thin, pale outlines circling the lantern, like shadows trying to stand upright. They moved slow, drifting more than walking, and each time I blinked, they were somewhere else. One stood just to my left, its face turned toward me, but not really a face, more like a blur of gray that breathed. The lantern flickered once, twice, then all of them vanished. Only the lantern remained, glowing steady again like nothing had changed. But the ground beneath my boots had begun to tremble, softly at first, like a heartbeat under the soil. I could feel it rising up through my legs, a deep vibration, slow and heavy, too real to ignore. The flame inside the lantern fluttered, and the glass began to rattle against the metal frame. That's when I heard it, a low growl, not above the ground, below it, a sound that didn't travel through the air, but through me. The earth seemed to breathe, inhaling dust, exhaling cold. Something massive shifted under the roots, something patient. I took a step back, then another. The lantern didn't dim this time. It burned brighter. It wanted me to see. The shapes appeared again, now closer, ringed around the light. Their arms hung at their sides, motionless, their heads tilted back, faces empty, throats open. The growl deepened, the soil cracked, and for a moment, I thought I saw fingers, gray and slick, pressing up to the dirt near my feet. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick, humming with that sound. The lantern swayed harder, as if something beneath the ground was pulling its chain. Then silence, all at once. Even the wind stopped. The lantern froze in place, and I realized the glow wasn't from fire anymore. It was from eyes, dozens of them, staring out from inside the glass, their pupils thin and trembling, watching me through the fog pane. I stepped back again, but the hill felt longer now. The ground stretched like a dream you couldn't wake from. I didn't run. I couldn't. Behind me, I heard the faint jingle of the lantern's hook. Once, twice, and when I turned, it wasn't on the hill anymore. It was hanging from a branch right beside me. The same pale light, the same slow sway, the same eyes. The ground under my feet pulsed, once, a warning or a heartbeat. Then it stopped. Mist closed around everything. The light dimmed, then vanished completely, and all that was left was the quiet and the faint smell of burned oil on the wind. The road leaves the village like a vein cut open, narrow, twisting through the trees. The air smells like damp soil and smoke, faint, fading behind me. I shouldn't have stayed this late. The last lights in the houses are already gone, swallowed by the fog. The gravel crunches beneath my shoes, soft and uneven. Every step feels too loud, too close to something that's listening. The trees lean inward, bending their tall, Wet bodies over the road. Their branches hang like thin fingers. I can't see where the path ends. Only the pale smear of fog ahead, glowing faintly in the dark. A wind stirs. Not strong, just enough to move the leaves. They whisper together, brushing in slow circles. Almost like voices trying to form words. I keep walking. My bag feels heavier now. The strap bites against my shoulder, cold with moisture. Somewhere behind me, gravel shifts. I stop. Wait. Nothing. Only the hum of the night. The kind that fills your chest and doesn't let go. I turn my head, slowly. The fog presses close. Thick, white, breathing. No shapes. No footsteps. Still, I can feel something there. I start again, faster this time. My heartbeat matches the rhythm of my shoes. Left, right, left, right. Each step swallowed by mist. The trees thicken around me. Their trunks are darker now, like tall shadows bleeding into one another. Somewhere far away, a branch snaps. I freeze. The sound doesn't echo. It's too close. It shouldn't have been that close. I look back again. Nothing moves. Just fog, layer like breath on glass. I whisper to myself, just keep walking. It's only the forest. It's only the night. But the air changes. Heavy. Still. Like the whole world is holding its breath. I hear it again, a soft scrape. Footsteps, maybe, but not on gravel. On something wet. It moves when I move. Pauses when I pause. I try to see shapes in the fog. But the light doesn't reach that far. Only outlines. Branches, low leaves, the curve of the road. Then a darker patch where there shouldn't be one. Standing between the trees. Tall. Still. My throat tightens. I blink. It's gone. The fog ripples as if something stepped back into it. I want to run. But the road is narrow and the mist looks solid ahead. Like if I move too fast, I'll run straight into it and disappear. So I walk. Slowly. Listening. There's a low hum now. At first, I think it's in my head, a ringing maybe from fear, but it's outside me, in the trees, in the air itself. The branches above sway even though the wind is gone. Their movements don't match the sound. It's like the forest is alive, adjusting itself. The road curves. A small wooden sign appears through the mist, half rotten. Letters carved but unreadable. Someone's name, maybe someone who never made it home. My breath leaves in small white clouds. The air smells like rain that never comes. And under it, something sour. Old metal. Rust. I stop again. Because now I know the footsteps aren't behind me anymore. They're beside me, just off the path. Moving quietly. Perfectly in rhythm. I glance to the left. Only fog. To the right, more of the same. Then, from the corner of my eye, a flicker, a shadow bending out of place, a shoulder shape, then gone. I whisper, who's there? The sound feels wrong in my mouth, too loud for the silence. No answer, only breathing that isn't mine. Soft, damp, close. I start walking faster. The road dips downward. I don't remember it doing that before. The trees thin, but the fog doesn't. My steps splash now, through puddles that weren't there a minute ago. Something moves in the mist beside me. Not running, not walking, gliding. I don't look anymore. I just keep going. Eyes on the faint outline ahead. A bend, a promise of something clearer. The hum grows louder, vibrating through my chest, through the ground. The air feels wrong now. Too thick, like breathing through cloth. I stumble, catch myself, look up, and the road ends. Just stops. No turn. No fork. Only fog. I take one more step. The gravel beneath my shoe shifts, then fades, like stepping off the edge of a dream. The hum cuts out. The world exhales. Behind me, the footsteps stop too. I turn around, and there's nothing but the empty road, stretching back into the mist. No sound. No shadow. Just the pale light and the quiet. And somewhere inside it, something waiting for me to take another step. It was almost dusk when I found it, at the edge of the overgrown path, half buried in vines and dust. A gate, tall, iron, rusted through like dried blood. It leaned slightly to one side, as if it had been waiting too long. Each breeze made it move just enough to whisper, a faint, aching creak. The air there felt different. Heavy, still, but humming beneath the quiet. I could smell the damp metal before I touched it. It tasted like rain and rot. The sky had turned that strange blue-gray, the kind that swallows color. Even the birds were gone. I stood there for a while, watching the gate sway on its hinge. No wind, no reason for it to move at all. The grass around it had grown tall, but the earth under the gate was bare, a perfect line, as if nothing dared grow where it touched. The hum grew stronger when I stepped closer, low at first, like a breath through hollow metal, then deeper, like something beneath the ground was waking. It didn't sound alive, but it didn't sound dead either. I reached out, fingertips brushing the rust. The cold ran straight through me, as if the gate wasn't metal at all, but something else wearing metal skin. The vines clung tighter the closer I looked, their stems twitching against the bars. Not from the wind, from movement. Something shifted behind them, a shape or a shadow. It was hard to tell in that pale light. The hum bent for a moment, like static bending around a voice. My name almost lived inside it. Almost. The creak came again, longer this time, and with it, that faint smell of soil turning, like earth being dug up from the other side. I stepped back. The air rippled once, and the vines pressed flat against the metal, as if something was breathing out from behind them. The gate swayed forward, not far, but enough to touch the tips of the grass. The latch had rotted long ago, yet it didn't open. It only waited. I tried to listen past the hum, but there was nothing. No crickets, no wind through the leaves. Just that soft vibration, steady as a pulse. I remember thinking it sounded like wires buried deep in the ground, or bones under tension. When I turned to leave, the sound followed, a low dragging behind me, metal brushing dirt. I stopped. The hum stopped too. The silence after felt wrong, like the world had been emptied out, but I was still standing inside it. My breath came too loud, too sharp, and then one single creak. Slow, long. The gate had moved again. Opened just a little. Through the crack, the light looked thinner, unreal. There was something standing in it, a shape darker than the trees. It didn't move, but the shadow of it pulsed with the hum. For a moment, I thought it was me, a reflection somehow caught in the metal. But the eyes, they were open before mine were. I took another step back. The hum softened, like it was calming itself. The vines began to curl back up the bars, slowly, like hands folding shut. The gate eased closed. The creak grew distant, like it was moving away, deeper into itself. By the time the last sliver of light faded, the hum was gone. Only the cold air remained, still humming somewhere behind my ribs. I walked away without turning back, but the sound stayed with me, faint, like metal under strain, like something waiting for me to return. Sometimes at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear it, a soft creak in the dark, a hum beneath the floor, and I know the gate never stopped moving. It only found another way to open. It started in late autumn. The air felt brittle, like glass about crack. Nights came earlier than they should have, and the sky always looked bruised. I remember standing by my window, the one facing the narrow street below. The lamplight trembled across the pavement, flickering against a row of shuttered roofs. That's when I saw it, a figure, still as stone, standing at the edge of a rooftop across from mine. No wind moved its coat. No breath fogged the air around it. Only those eyes, faintly glowing, a sick, cold light that didn't belong in this world. I blinked, and it was gone, but the roof didn't look empty. It looked disturbed, like the air itself refused to settle. I told myself it was reflection, a trick of the lamplight. Maybe I was tired, but my chest wouldn't calm down, each heartbeat louder than the last. For hours I sat by that window, waiting, listening. The night was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no dogs, no passing cars, only the hum in my ears, and something faint like breathing through static. By morning, frost had climbed the glass. When I touched it, the cold bit deeper than it should, and on the other side of the street, the same roof was wet, as if someone had stood there all night. Days passed. I tried to forget, but every evening, around the same time, I'd catch my reflection in the glass, and behind it, a shadow standing still. Sometimes it looked taller, sometimes shorter, always watching. One night, I opened the window. The hinges groaned softly, a sound too human, too close. I leaned out, scanning the rooftops. The street was empty, but I could feel something there. Not eyes exactly, but a weight pressing into my skin. The air smelled faintly of rain and rust. My breath came out white, and from somewhere far above, a drip hit the metal gutter. Slow, steady, like the ticking of a clock. Then silence. I pulled back, closed the window. But when the glass met the frame, I saw a smear, a pale fingerprint, on the outside. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak in the ceiling sounded deliberate. The walls felt thinner, like someone was pressing their ear against them. I kept the lights on, all of them, but around 3 a.m., a shadow crossed the ceiling. Not fast, not sudden, just a slow pass, as though someone were walking along the roof again, and then a faint tap right above my head. Once, twice, then nothing. By dawn, I was shaking. The world outside was colorless. Sky the shade of cold milk, trees shivering under frost. I almost convinced myself it was in my mind, until I went outside. The roof across from mine, it had footprints, clear ones, pressed deep into the frost, leading to the very edge and stopping there. No prints going back. After that, I stopped opening my window, stopped looking at the rooftops altogether, but the feeling never left. Even now, I can sense it, standing just beyond the frame of my sight. Sometimes a street light catches something on the tiles, a flicker, a shimmer, like eyes reflecting light. And every time I blink, I wonder if I'll open them to find it closer. Last night, I felt a draft from the ceiling, a slow exhale of cold air that brushed my hair. When I looked up, a faint circle of dust fell, like something had moved above me. I didn't move for a long time, didn't even breathe, just waited and listened. The silence was thick enough to taste. Metallic, old. Then came a whisper of pressure, a board shifting gently, and the faint scrape of weight sliding away. When morning came, I checked the street again. Empty, but the frost on my own roof was disturbed this time. A line of prints, starting from the window, ending at the edge. I keep the curtains closed now, but sometimes when a room is quiet enough, I can still feel it, standing somewhere above me, waiting for me to look up. And I know that if I do, it won't vanish this time. It'll be there, still, watching, silent. The trees grew closer the farther I went. Their branches arched over the road like ribs. The morning light was pale, barely there. Mist gathered at my ankles. It moved when I moved, slowly, almost breathing. I shouldn't have come this far. The last house in the village was long behind me. No one ever walked past a stone marker, not alone. But I had to see. They said the fog here had a voice, that if you listened long enough, it would say your name. I told myself that wasn't true. That mist was just air and water. But the closer I came to the forest edge, the quieter the world became. No birds, no wind, just a wet hush of fog pressing against bark. I stepped off the road. The ground sank under my boots. Leaves slick with dew clung to my feet like thin paper. The trees here were older. Their roots twisted above the soil like veins. Some had carvings in them, faint, like something written and erased. I brushed one with my hand. The wood was cold, colder than the air. And when I looked closer, the grooves formed letters. My name. I stepped back. The fog thickened, turning the path behind me into blank white. I couldn't even see the outline of the road anymore. Something moved ahead, not a full shape, just a darker patch in the mist. I thought it was a tree, until it shifted. A whisper slipped through the air. Low, wet like breath through leaves. Too close. I turned. The fog moved with me. It brushed my sleeves, soft as fingertips. And I realized it wasn't just mist. It listened. Each step I took, it followed, matching the rhythm of my breath. Then came the whisper again. Not words this time. Just a hum, slow and steady, like someone thinking aloud. I tried to remember which way the village was, but all I saw were trees fading into gray. Every direction looked the same. Every direction felt wrong. I called out once. My voice vanished before it reached the next trunk. The hum grew louder. I could feel in my ribs. And then quiet. A silence, so thick I could hear my heart beat against it. Something behind me breathed in. A deep, long inhale, like the fog itself had lungs. When I turned, it cleared just enough to see shapes. Not human. Not quite trees either. Tall figures with the color of bark and the stillness of statues. Their faces were smoothed away, like the fog had wiped them clean. But I could tell they were looking at me. One leaned forward. Its form shivered, blurred, then stilled again. The whisper returned, not from one place, but from all around. It said my name. Every syllable cracked with frost. I took a step back and felt the air warm behind me. The forest edge. Somewhere close. I ran. Branches tore at my coat. Roots caught my ankles. The mist chased, heavy and cold, pressing against my back like a second skin. And then, open air. The road again. The village lights faint in the distance. I stopped only once. Turned back. The fog had stopped at the trees. It curled at the border like it was waiting. And for a moment, I thought I saw someone standing there. A shape shaped like me. Still, watching. The mist rose higher, covering the figure completely. By the time I blinked, it was gone. The forest was silent again. But when I passed the stone marker on my way home, the fog moved just slightly, as if nodding goodbye. I didn't look back. It sat at the edge of the field, half hidden by weeds. A small well house, slumped and forgotten. The wood had turned gray, soft under the rain. Its roof sagged like it was tired of standing. I don't know why I went closer. Maybe it was the humming. It drifted across the tall grass, faint and uneven, like someone singing from underground. The air around it felt still. No birds, no wind, only that slow, steady hum. I remember pressing my palm against the wall. The wood was damp but warm, like something living was just beneath the surface. The door hung half open. Inside it smelled of rust and moss. Water glimmered below the cracked stones, dark, silent, waiting. I stepped in. The floorboard sighed under my weight. Each breath echoed back at me, almost in rhythm with the humming. There were old tools by the wall, a rope coil, a rusted bucket, and a small glass jar filled with something pale and floating. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. My fingers hovered just above the lid. That's when the humming stopped. The silence was heavy, like air before a storm. My own heartbeat became too loud, too fast. Then, from the dark throat of the well, a single drop fell. The sound rippled, deep and endless. I crouched beside the stones. There was movement down there, not water. Something slow, pale, shifting just beneath the surface. The smell rose up with iron and earth, like something that shouldn't be disturbed. When I looked again, I realized the rope wasn't still. It was trembling, as if something below was pulling it, inch by inch. I stepped back. The boards creaked. A low breath came from the open mouth of the well, almost human, almost whispering. I turned toward the doorway, but the light had changed. The world outside looked gray and distant, like fog pressed against glass. Behind me, something touched the floor. A soft scrape, then another, too light for footsteps, too close to be wind. The jar on the shelf began to hum again. The pale thing inside it spun slowly, its shape blurring with every turn. I watched, frozen. The sound grew louder until it filled the whole room, vibrating through the walls, through my chest, through the air itself. It wasn't a song anymore. It was words, but they were too soft to understand, too deep to belong to anything human. The rope gave a final twitch, and then it went still. The hum faded into a low breath. The water below barely moved. For a moment, everything was quiet again. I left without closing the door. I didn't look back. But as I crossed the field, the wind began to move through the grass. It carried something with it, a faint vibration, like the echo of that humming. Even now, when the night is quiet, I still hear it. Soft, distant, coming from the fields beyond the trees. It's waiting there, under the rotting roof, over that old, forgotten well, still singing, still calling, still alive. It stood at the far edge of the village, a forgotten shape against the pale horizon. The old barn, its roof sagged inward like a mouth that had been opened too long, wood rotted to gray, nails rusted to the color of dried blood. I went there after dusk. The path was soft with mud. Each step sank, quiet, deliberate. They said no one used it anymore. But sometimes light flickered from inside, a faint, uneven glow that vanished when approached. I carried a lantern. Its glass fogged from my breath. The flame trembled when I exhaled. Wind pressed against the fields. Grasses brushed together, whispering. The air tasted like iron and damp hay. When I reached the door, it was already open, just a sliver, enough for one pail eye to peer through. I didn't push it further. It moved on its own. The hinges sighed. A slow, dry breath from the dark within. Dust swirled in the lantern light, spinning like ash. The air moved differently in there, heavy, almost warm. It hummed faintly like someone breathing just behind me. I stepped inside. The floorboards bowed, soft and swollen. Each one murmured under my weight. Above me, the rafters formed a crooked spine. Between them, empty spaces, shifting. The dust didn't fall straight. It twisted, circled. Shapes, forming, breaking apart again. At first, I thought it was a light. The flame flickering against the beams. But then, something blocked it. A shape moved past the lantern's glow. Too slow for a bird. Too smooth for an animal. It vanished into the far corner, where the walls met in shadow. I lifted the lantern higher. Its light brushed across broken tools, an overturned bucket, a single rope hanging from a beam. The rope swayed. There was no wind. Something brushed my shoulder, gentle, like a sleeve made of air. I turned. Nothing, but the hum grew louder, a low, steady vibration that I could feel behind my ribs. It pulsed, not through the floor, but through the space itself. Every surface seemed to breathe, the walls expanding, contracting, slowly, patiently. My lantern dimmed. The flame bent sideways, as if drawn toward something deeper in the dark. I took another step. The boards beneath me were wet now. My shoe stuck slightly when I lifted it. A faint pattern stretched along the wood, dark stains, spreading in thin lines. Not quite red, not quite dry. Then a sound. Not footsteps, not movement, just a pause between two breaths. Too long to belong to me. I whispered, "Is someone here?" The echo didn't return. Only the hum, only the soft stirring of dust. I felt again, that shift in the air, like the barn exhaled. And in that moment, every speck of dust froze midair. Every creak went silent. It was listening. The rope swayed again, wider this time. It frayed and brushed against the post beside it, and a faint scrape cut through the stillness. Then I saw it, a handprint, pressed into the dust on the far wall. Fresh, too clear to be old. My lantern flickered once more. In that half-second of light, the shapes in the corners leaned closer. Not bodies, not quite shadows either, but the suggestion of form. They lingered just outside the reach of flame, waiting. The hum built into a trembling tone. It wasn't coming from around me anymore. It was coming from beneath. I knelt, tracing the boards with my fingers. The wood pulsed under my hand, a slow throb, like something alive beneath the floor. Then the lantern went out. The hum stopped. Silence swallowed the barn. In that blackness, I felt the air shift again. Close, almost touching. Something moved beside my face. Slow, deliberate, and drew in a shallow breath. Warm air brushed my cheek. Then a whisper, so faint it almost wasn't there, still here. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I backed toward the open door. Each step careful, blind, guided only by the cold air seeping from outside. When my hand finally met the frame, I pushed. The door didn't move. Something on the other side was holding it. For a moment, I stood frozen, one hand on the wood, one against the wall, heart beating too loud to hear anything else. Then, suddenly, the pressure lifted. The door swung open. and I stumbled into the field. The night air felt hollow, too still. Even the insects had gone quiet. When I turned back, the barn stood empty. No hum, no light, just the open door, swaying gently on its hinges. And from inside, the dust still moved, as though something unseen was breathing it back to life. It sat at the edge of the hill. The locked house. I'd seen it before, years ago, I think, but it looked smaller now, sunken into the ground somehow, like the earth was swallowing it slowly. There was a padlock on the front door. Rust had eaten through the metal, but it still held tight. When the wind moved, the chain trembled, a faint hum, low and steady, like something alive beneath it. The air was colder here. Wet soil clung to my shoes. Every breath I took carried a hint of mold, and something older, something like dust from books that hadn't been opened in decades. The windows were dark, no curtains, no light, just a sheet of glass, and behind it, movement. I told myself it was reflection, that maybe the trees behind me were shifting in the wind, but the rhythm wasn't right. It swayed slower, like someone pacing just out of view. I stepped closer. The hum from the lock grew louder, not a mechanical noise, more like a voice, drawn out and trapped in metal, a vibration that moved up through the wood, into the frame, into me. I touched the door. It was warm. The air around me thickened. I could smell the damp earth, the rotting leaves pressed into ground by rain, and something else, a faint sweetness like perfume, fading in and out with every heartbeat. The lock twitched. I took a step back. The chain tightened on its own, links pulling together until they trembled. Something inside the house shifted. A soft scrape, like furniture being dragged across a wooden floor. I wanted to leave then, but the windows kept pulling at me. Behind the glass, a shadow passed. Slow, deliberate, too tall to be a person, too quiet to be real. I blinked and it was gone. Only the faint outline of movement remained, like a memory pressed into the dark. The hum deepened. I felt it in my teeth, a low vibration that made the air pulse. Then a sound, not from the door, but from above. A single breath. Not mine. It came from the top window, where the roof slanted inward. I saw condensation spreading across the glass, a fog that formed, then vanished in seconds. Someone was breathing in there. The padlock shivered again. One of the screws on the latch twisted free, as if loosened from the inside. It clinked against the step, rolled once, and stopped. The hum went silent. The world around me stilled. No wind, no birds, just that deep, soft silence that makes you hear your own pulse. I leaned in, close enough to see my reflection in the window, but there was another face beside mine, pale, faint, its eyes too far apart. It smiled before it faded. I turned away, but the air didn't move. The smell of damp earth thickened, pressing against the back of my throat. Something behind the door shifted again, heavier this time, and the faint perfume returned, stronger, closer, as if it were being exhaled from the cracks. The chain gave a slow rattle, not angry, not warning, almost welcoming. I don't remember when I stepped back, or when the sun began to sink behind the hill, but the shadows in the windows began to move again, not pacing, not watching, dancing slowly, as if waiting for me to stay. The hum started once more, fainter now, but deeper, like it had settled inside the walls. The lock gleamed in the dim light, a single drop of moisture trembling beneath it. It looked almost like a heartbeat. I turned to leave. The path behind me had changed, narrower, darker, swallowed by fog. The air carried that same perfume still, trailing after me like a memory that wouldn't let go. When I looked back one last time, the door was open, only a few inches, but enough to see the dark breathing through. And from inside the house, I heard the hum again, soft, steady, calling me by name. It was past midnight when the fog began to rise again. The fields beyond my window were gone, swallowed by a soft, white blur that pressed against the glass. I could hear it breathing, not the wind, something steadier, slower, the kind of sound that hums just beneath silence. I sat there for a while, watching the way the fog seemed to glow, not from the moon. The moon had vanished hours ago. This light came from somewhere deeper inside the mist. A pale shimmer. Moving. I thought at first it was a reflection, maybe from the street lamp down the road. But there were no lamps that far into the field. And the light wasn't steady. It pulsed, like it was alive. When I opened the window, the air that drifted in was cold and wet, tasting faintly of metal. Every breath felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on me. Somewhere inside the fog, the shimmer moved again, a soft ripple of brightness that made the mist look like liquid glass. Shapes began to form within it, slow, weightless, almost human. I leaned closer to the window, the glass fogged with my breath. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing there, tall, blurred, bending slightly as if looking back at me. Then it shifted, and there were two. Their edges glowed faintly, but the rest of them was colorless, translucent, like heat rising off a road. They weren't walking. They were drifting, each movement slow enough to make time feel wrong. The hum grew stronger. It trembled through the floorboards, through my chest. I could feel it in my teeth, a low vibration that wasn't quite sound, but not silence either. Between the waves of it, I thought I heard something else. Whispers, soft, overlapping voices. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew they were words. They carried weight. They carried direction. And they were calling toward the house. I turned off the lamp beside me. The darkness made the shimmer outside brighter, almost white now, almost painful. The fog pressed closer, swallowing the fence, the tree, everything I knew. I tried to tell myself it was just light bending. That fog could do strange things. But light doesn't move like that. It doesn't breathe. Then the window pane shivered. A faint crack of frost spread across it, delicate as veins beneath skin. Something brushed the other side. Not a hand. Not anything I could name. Just a ripple. A small distortion in the shimmer. It paused there, right in front of me. I didn't move. Couldn't. For a moment, everything stilled. The hum stopped. Even the fog seemed to hold its breath. Then, so faintly I almost missed it, the whisper came again. Closed this time. Inside the room. I stepped back. The air behind me felt heavier, like someone else was breathing it. The shadows along the wall had changed. Longer, bending toward the light. I wanted to look away, but the shimmer pulsed once more, brighter than before, and my reflection disappeared in the window. There was only the glow washing across the floorboards, tracing the outline of the door. I thought I heard footsteps, soft ones, from inside the fog, and then I realized they were echoing here. Inside the room. My chest tightened. The whispers rose and fell, dozens of them now, blending into a low, trembling hum. The air shimmered, faintly bending, like heat warping a mirror. The light seeped across the walls, climbing slowly toward the ceiling, until everything was bathed in pale silver. I reached out a hand toward it. It looked almost solid, a curtain of light that trembled at the edge of my fingers. For a moment, I thought I could see through it. A field, a figure standing alone in the mist. That it looked like me. I pulled my hand back, heart beating too fast. But the light didn't fade. It followed the motion, stretching, thinning, like a thread pulled loose. The hum turned sharper, vibrating in the air between us. The figure in the fog tilted its head, the same way I did, and then a blink and the shimmer collapsed. The fog fell flat against the ground, rolling away into the trees. The air went still, empty. Only darkness remained beyond the window. I waited, but the hum didn't return. The shapes were gone. Everything was quiet. But when I turned back toward the room, the pale light was still there, faint, trembling softly from inside the mirror on the wall. Not moving now, just watching. The fog thickened as I left the village. It clung to my coat, to my hair, to every breath I took. Behind me, the narrow path disappeared, swallowed whole by the gray. I didn't look back, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I already knew what I'd see. The shapes were there, waiting. They always were, just at the edge of sight, still and patient, where the light couldn't quite reach. The lantern in my hand trembled. Its flame bent and fluttered like it wanted to leave too. Each step I took made it flicker lower, as if the air itself resisted my leaving. The road curved around the hill. Cold earth shifted beneath my boots. The The trees leaned closer, their branches wet with fog, their bark glistening like pale skin. Somewhere behind me to whisper, a soft thread of sound woven through the mist. My name, maybe, or the memory of it. I didn't answer. Not this time. For years, the lanterns had lit the way through that village, one for every soul who stayed. When the last one went dark, it meant they were gone. But mine still burned. The flame was small now, just a faint glow behind the glass. It hummed softly like a pulse, steady and fragile. I kept it close to my chest. It was warm, warmer than my hands, warmer than the breath that fogged before my face. The shapes followed me, not footsteps, not voices, just the weight of being seen. Sometimes when the fog thinned, I thought I could make out their faces. Eyes hollowed, mouths still moving, the ones who never left. A faint rustling, not leaves, not wind. Something brushing against the lantern glass. The flame dimmed, then brightened again as if startled. The road narrowed to nothing, just mud and roots and silence. The world beyond the village was emptier than I remembered. No birds, no wind, only the low hum that came from the light in my hand. I stopped when I reached the old bridge. It was rotting, half buried in mist, the planks slick with moss. Below, the water moved slowly, thick and dark like oil. I stood there for a while. The fog pressed in from both sides. Behind me, faint orange glows where the other lanterns still hung, their flames flickering, fighting the dark. They looked so small now, so far away. I raised my lantern, the last one still burning outside the village. Its light shimmered weakly against the fog. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I could still hear them. The whispers, they called softly, like they didn't want to be forgotten. Names, prayers, promises. They tangled around my thoughts until I couldn't tell which ones were mine anymore. The bridge groaned under my weight. Each step sent a shiver through the wood. The flame wavered. The glass cracked. I paused halfway across. Beneath the bridge, something moved. Slowly, deliberately, like the fog itself had found a body. I lowered the lantern toward the water. The reflection looked wrong. The light bent the wrong way, down instead of up, and in that pale reflection, I saw the village behind me again. The shapes closer than before. They were standing at the path's edge now, silent, waiting. The lantern flickered once more, as if taking a breath. Then it steadied. I whispered into the fog, not words, not a farewell, just breath, carried away by the cold. The warmth faded from my fingers. The flame dimmed, then curled in on itself, glowing faintly like an ember. The whispering stopped. Everything stopped, and in that stillness, I understood. The lantern wasn't meant to light the way out. It was meant to guide me home. I set it down on the bridge rail. Its glow bled softly through the mist. Enough to see by. Enough to remember. The fog rose higher, covering my boots, my hands, my chest. It was gentle now, almost kind. When I looked back one last time, the shapes were gone. Only the lanterns remained, faint, flickering lights in the gray. Watching, waiting. I took a step forward, and the fog swallowed me whole.